Hey, this is Troy from Planet 76. We've got some really good Sixers-focused content coming your way today. Make sure you subscribe to the pod so you can be in the know when we release new content. Enjoy the show. What's going on, Sixers fans? Welcome to another episode of Planet 76 Podcast. I am one of your hosts, Troy, and Michael's here with me as always. This is episode 161 of Planet 76, and this is our first since games have been played in the 2024-25 NBA season. The first week is in the books for the Sixers, and there's a lot to talk about, but at the same time, it's hard to figure out what to say, as Michael and I were kind of just talking before we hit record. You know, there's certainly things to get into, but at the same time, we're a little speechless because the Sixers sit at 1-3 through the first 4 games of the season, and we're not happy about that. But then you think about who's been on the floor, and specifically who has not been on the floor. Joel Embiid has yet to see time in an NBA game this season, including preseason. Paul George, obviously with that injury to his knee in the preseason, he has not seen the floor so far in the regular season through the first 4 games, although the word was a couple days ago that he was going to play against the Pistons tonight, Wednesday night, but he did not. That news came out, I think, yesterday that he was not going to play. And so here we are. Sixers are 1-3. Their lone win is against the Indiana Pacers in Indiana, a game that went into overtime and a game that Maxey had to go for 45 in. And then Sixers obviously losing the first one of the season to the Bucks, took a trip up north to the Raptors, lost by, I think, 8 to them. And then, got the win against the Pacers, and then a 105-95 loss to the Detroit Pistons tonight for their first win of the season. The Detroit Pistons, remember what they did last year. Tobias Harris and the Detroit Pistons, by the way. Tobias tonight had, I think, 18 points, 14 rebounds. Not sure when he had his last 18 and 14 game with the Sixers. But anyway, Michael, all that to say, real quick, I don't know how to word this. What's wrong? What are your thoughts? I mean, they're 1-3. Yeah, Joel hasn't played. Yeah, Paul George hasn't played. But 1-3 with a loss to the Pistons at home, a loss on the road to Toronto, a loss at home to Milwaukee. There's something wrong, even though those two guys haven't played. What's wrong? Or what are you seeing that you don't like? Or I don't know. Good luck.
It's kind of awkward because there isn't really much this team can do until Embiid and PG come back. For one, because we know how much Embiid means for this team, what he means for this team, because he's arguably the best player in the league, but also because he's just a massive human, and he does a lot with his size for the Sixers that they don't have. Yes, they have Drummond. Yes, Gershon helps because he plays a lot bigger than he is, but at the same time, you need Embiid back. I don't have to explain myself. You need Embiid back. PG hasn't played at all. Don't know what he looks like with his team except for, I think, 20 minutes in the preseason against Minnesota almost 2 weeks ago. So there isn't really much you can do until they come back, until they play, because they're your team. That's your identity right there, is Joel Embiid. And not that the team goes where he goes, but essentially, yes, the team goes where he goes. Without him, you don't have much of a direction. And I think we're seeing a lot of that currently. I know they did win against the Indiana Pacers a few nights ago in overtime. So it's good to see that. It's good to see Maxey kind of slowly but surely gathering himself and getting him into the role of playing without Embiid and producing without Embiid. Those games are definitely going to be few and far between because, for starters, I made a post about this a few days ago. For starters, he's still young. He's 23 years old. He still has time. He still needs to be, or he still is adjusting to the NBA. Secondly, he's adjusting to making up for an Embiid-sized gap in the roster, and that's not an easy task in itself. So Maxey may never be great at that. Maxey may struggle as a number one option. But at the end of the day, that's understandable and almost expected because he's not a number one option. He hasn't been. No fault to his own. It's just right now, that's not the player he is. Will he become that kind of player? I have no idea. But right now, he's not that, and we're kind of seeing that. Again, not a knock on his game. I'm not saying that he's any lesser of a player because he's not a number one option. Some guys just aren't number one options, and Tyrese Maxey's not. It also doesn't help that the guys around him haven't looked great. I give credit to Gershon. I give credit to Caleb Martin.
Nope.
I give credit to Kelly Oubre. Big credit to Kelly Oubre. Everybody else, just not great. Everybody else, aesthetically, doesn't look very good. It looks a little bit clunky. But again, there's 82 games in the season, and this is going to be a theme for me. I'm assuming for Troy as well, for us on the podcast. There's 82 games in the season. We have to adjust our mindsets as fans to say, you know what? There's 82 games in the season. Embiid hasn't played. PG hasn't played. It's only going to be tonight was game 4. Game 4 of 82. We're not even a tenth of the way through the season yet. So expectations have to be adjusted accordingly. And until we get Embiid back, until we get PG back, there isn't much this team can do except just play and try and win. There's no guarantees with this team without Embiid and PG. There's no realistic takeaways you can have after a 1-3 start without Embiid and Paul George.
I think that's fair. Right, it's hard to judge this team based off those two major pieces missing from your lineup. But again, to your point, some of these guys not looking good, and in the point raised with Maxey is a really important one too, because we've seen him. Embiid missed a lot of time last year, and Paul George wasn't here. James Harden wasn't here. It's not like they had another guy, and he took a lot of the load and of offense. And while he might have put up some points, that the Sixers had a far worse record with Embiid off the floor. And it's continuing into the season. Embiid's not playing, Maxey's there, and yet they're 1-3 without yet to win a game at home. Again, one of those against the Detroit Pistons, who certainly aren't going to have as bad a year as they did last season, but they're not good, and you just don't like that. The Sixers did not look good tonight. They lose by 10, and it wasn't a stretch in the fourth quarter. It wasn't even that close against Detroit. And so there's some things to figure out because, one, yes, Embiid will be back. He will play. We want him healthy. Paul George, we don't want him suiting up until he's healthy. Right at this point, let's get these guys fully healthy and ready to go. But even if they come back next week or in 2 weeks, there's going to be times when both of these guys miss games. There just is. And you don't want even these first 4 to be an indication of what's to come in the future when those two don't play. And what I mean by that is I don't want to go 1-3 in a 4-game stretch again when those two guys don't play. And it's probably going to happen. Could be worse too. But I think the unit as constructed without those two guys needs to figure something out where it looks better and we're putting forth a better product, because again we could be 0-4 right now. We went to overtime and got a win against Indiana, and we could be sitting 0-4 right now. So I just think there's some things to figure out, because realistically this isn't going to be the only stretch of games where those two aren't on the floor. So that's got to be figured out. My other question, I don't know if you know more than I do on this subject, but Reggie Jackson has logged only 3 minutes in the loss to Toronto. That's his only action this season. Do you have any idea why or
No.
what? Did he come in with an injury that I'm forgetting? Any clue what's going on there?
No injury, as far as I know. But also, I don't know why he didn't play much. I can only imagine it was just a game time thing, a situational thing. Again, we talked about this before the season began. The Sixers have a lot of guys who can play basketball really well. And that means that there are times where certain guys are not going to play. Situationally, it just may not be best for them to play, be on the court, log minutes. So there's definitely going to be times where, unless you're Maxey, George, or Embiid, you might not play, or Oubre, okay, sure. You might not play, or
Right.
Caleb Martin. You might not play, or Andre Drummond. But that's it. That's it. You might not play. Unless you're those guys, you might not play. And that's just the nature of this team. So on a night where Reggie Jackson doesn't play, not that I know why he didn't play, but I don't think it's too big of a concern because at the end of the day they did lose. But I don't think it's too big of a concern because I just feel like it's a situational thing with Nick Nurse, with the coaching staff. Hey, Reggie, we're gonna give you a break, even though it's only game 2 of the season. And it could be anything. It could be
and
a multitude of things.
Yep. And then meanwhile, Kyle Lowry, who's again that conversation that we've had is, who gets the minutes between these two. Kyle Lowry's shooting the leather off the ball early going. He's 9 of 15 from 3, 61%.
Scorching.
He's made 9 out of 15. Yeah. Through 4 games, shooting the ball really well. He started in a few of these games, logging 24 minutes through 4 games. Obviously, he's going to shoot like that. He's going to keep a spot in the rotation. But yeah, I mean, I'd have to guess, especially after tonight. You look in the mirror a little bit, and you need something because again, you mentioned outside of Maxey and outside of Oubre, and obviously outside of Lowry's shooting and Drummond's rebounding. He had 13 rebounds, I think, one game, and had, I think, 9 and 12 or something tonight. I don't even know. But outside of that, there's not a lot of consistency, and I think they kind of need a spark, and maybe Reggie Jackson is that. So I think if it continues where George is out and Drummond's out, why not give Reggie Jackson the keys at some point and say, see what you can do? Now, I get that Joel and Paul George play different positions. They're not necessarily the ones that are keeping him from playing, but dude, you need something to work. We don't want this losing to continue, especially if those guys are going to be out because, again, we're getting way ahead of ourselves a little bit, or I am, but let's say Embiid plays 30 games this season. Let's say George plays 35. There's a lot of games that these two aren't going to be on the floor, and we have to make the playoffs. I'm not, again, so way ahead, but, because I'm not doubting the Sixers are going to make the playoffs. But it's going to take some wins without those two on the floor. That's all I'm saying.
And I think the team is good enough to win games without them too. Obviously, it's very matchup dependent. Like that Raptors game, they easily could have won that game. Tonight, maybe a little tougher just because of the guards the Pistons have. It's tough to really contain them. But I think this team is good enough to win some games without Embiid and PG. So we obviously haven't seen that yet. They've just looked really dysfunctional, I guess you could say, and that might be too harsh.
Yeah,
that might be too harsh of a descriptor, but that's how I feel. So, again, there isn't really much we as fans can take away. There isn't really much the Sixers can even do because it's so hard to accurately gauge what a team is when 70% of their team isn't playing. And you can use whatever number you want. I'm going to say 70 just because Embiid and PG make up a very, very big part of his roster, both name-wise and production-wise, because they give you so much. So I got nothing else, really. That we're going to have to wait, and I know a lot of Sixers fans are really concerningly impatient, but there's nothing we can do. There's no reaction to this first week of games that's accurate. There's no conclusions to take away. It's just the fact that they need Embiid back and PG so we can accurately assess them at full strength and decide, okay, this team is this good, this, and this. And we need time. We need 20, 30 games to go by with or without them, preferably, and obviously, hopefully, with them. But we need games played. We need minutes and to see it. We need sample sizes to understand what's going on. Like a lot of people don't like that, but that's basketball. It's 82 games. It's not football. It's basketball. It's 82 games. There's so many minutes to be played for everybody on this team.
Yep. Yeah. A 1-3 start for the Sixers and a 1-3 start for the Eagles are very, very, very different things. Very different things. But where you kind of went there is actually where I was going to go next, as far as kind of a question I had. But you kind of answered a little bit. But to me, you look on Sixers fan pages, social media, whatever, and there's kind of two sides of this and where the Sixers are at right now. There are those that are in the camp of very impatient, very I saw something today was like Embiid stealing money from the team. He's not playing and all this, and there's that side, and then there's the side that's complete opposite, fully understanding and fully saying, let's get these guys healthy. Who cares? It's all about the playoffs. We need them healthy in the playoffs. We need them healthy in the playoffs. That's all they're saying. Now, doing 161 episodes with you, I think I know which side you're on.
Yeah.
But I just want to, I don't even know how to phrase the question, but I want to just give you a chance to kind of speak into that, because that's what I see, at least. There's two camps, and there's a small portion of people that are in the middle. I'll play a little bit of like devil's advocate.
No,
I guess,
you have to
again,
pick
I
a
think I know
side.
where you're going,
you
but
pick
like
a side.
I'm on the side of let's get these guys healthy. Who cares right now? But I don't want to let those people that are that crazy, that are saying all of these crazy things about Embiid, about Paul George, about the coach, about like whatever. I like to think it's just a frustration because it's the start of a new season and you just want to see this team play together, and we haven't yet. I hope it's just that versus kind of what they're saying. I hope the heart behind it is just like a desire to see these guys play together, because I do too, right? Like, I'm a little frustrated. Like I want to see our team at its best. It's we haven't seen him play in months, and we have a new star on the team who's not playing yet, but he's hurt. You know what I mean? I understand. But I hope the heart behind it is just because we want to see these guys play together. All right, so your turn to kind of speak into that. What side are you on?
Let's see. Where I stand. Everybody who's listened to this podcast for maybe even half an episode knows where I stand. But there's a difference between rational frustration and irrational frustration. Okay, we get it. We want to see Embiid playing, but the answer to your frustration is not saying that the Sixers should trade him. He's robbing them of money. He's making too much money to miss games. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how much money he's making. If he needs to miss games to preserve his health, that's number one. And I'm kind of tying everything together here in terms of the question you're posing here. Him missing games has no correlation to his contract, how much money he makes. He could be making $250 million over 3 years. It wouldn't matter in regards, in correlation to to how many games he plays and how much time he misses. Embiid's health is the number one priority. If he needs to miss games, or if the Sixers staff sees that he needs to miss games, or sees fit that he misses games, okay, that's fine. Because I talked about it last episode. Right. People want Embiid to win. They call him a loser. They call him a choke artist, fraud, flopping bum. But at the same time, those same people also complain when he misses games. So you don't like him when he's healthy. You don't like him when he's trying to preserve his health. You don't like him when he's not healthy. So what is it going to be? And Sixers fans especially, because they are not absolved of this. They do this. I see it all the time. They complain, Embiid's never healthy, we suck, we're never going to be anywhere, we're never going to do anything. But those same people complain when he is not going to be playing back-to-backs anymore in order to preserve his health. So you have to pick a side. You have to pick a side. You cannot be mad when he's hurt and then be mad when he tries to prevent himself from getting hurt. So Embiid's health is the number one priority. I've talked about it before. Again, I don't care if he misses 40 games. I don't care. Because, sure, the Sixers are going to be a low seed. That's probably what that means. But if Embiid is hurt, they might as well miss the playoffs in its entirety, because they're not winning anything in the playoffs without Embiid. So him being there and him not being there is a galaxy of difference, is a world, multiple worlds of difference. So keep that in mind next time you're going to complain and say the Sixers should trade him, he's robbing them, he's a bum. Keep that in mind, because all this guy wants to do is win. Every single year, he's proven it, because he's consistently done everything in his power to try and get on the court and play games. He's played through injuries. He's played through so many. You should all know how many injuries he's played through to try and be there for this team, to try and help this team win in the pursuit of a championship. His character, his desire to win should never ever be in question. His motivation should never ever be in question. There should never be a time where any of you ever even think of Embiid robbing this organization, Embiid being a bum because he's missing so many games. That is just so... You're a moron. If you think that, you're a moron. If you say that, you're a moron. It's just... It really is beyond frustration. It's just illusion. You can't say that. You can't. I don't care, oh, we're passionate, we want to win. Oh, there's a difference between passion and being a straight-up idiot. And a lot of you, unfortunately, fall into the category of being an idiot because you claim that we want to win, but it comes at the cost of slandering every single player on the team and thinking they suck. That's not what this is. That's not what this is about. That's not how this is done.
Wow. Well said, my friend. I'm glad I gave that one to you.
Yeah. Thank you. I needed that.
It's almost like some of that stuff that you just said, a lot of what you just said, you shouldn't even have to. Yeah. It's sad that you do, is the way that I interpret those things. Because you had to say some of those things.
I feel kind of embarrassed myself. I feel embarrassed for those who say these things. Therefore, I am embarrassed to say the things that they are saying because it's just so absurd to even think. Not even just say, but to think these things. Insane.
Yeah. Embarrassment by association with those that also claim to be Sixers fans. A little bit of that going on. But, yeah, you're right, though. That first thing you said, a rational frustration and one that's irrational. What's rational is just as a fan saying, all right, well, I'm really frustrated because I just wish we were winning and I wish that these guys were playing, but I understand why they're not. Irrational, again, is saying that this is crazy, the team's terrible, Embiid needs to go, he can't play in the regular season. You can see how one can get on that path, but it's not a rational place to be. Certainly right now in Sixers conversation. Now, the thing I'll say too is that I think a lot of this is heightened because it's the beginning of the season. Sixers are 1-3. There's probably going to be another stretch where at one point Joel Embiid and Paul George might both miss consecutively 4 games together. And if that happens in February, no one's talking about it like we are now, right? Because if the Sixers drop 3 out of 4 in a week in February, it's not going to be as big of a deal. It's a huge deal now because they're right at the beginning of the season and it's fresh and everybody's talking about it. Where's Joel? Why isn't he playing? When's Paul George going to get back out there? Oh, they're both hurt. Hey, that's a shock. All of these comments. But in February, everybody's going to have been through the ringer a little bit. Everybody's going to be banged up, and those guys are going to miss games then too. So it's part of the 82 games that you were talking about earlier, and our kind of weird or heavily talked about, heavily discussed stretch of basketball right now just happens to be that first 4 games of the season. So that's what I'll say there. But again, Tobias Harris returned 18 and 14 tonight. Anything to say there about Tobias Harris and the Detroit Pistons coming to Philly and getting the dub?
To say. The one thing I would like to say, though, is that if you boo Tobias Harris tonight, you're a weirdo. There's
Agreed.
A large contingent of Sixers fans who probably just went to the game to boo him. I think that's really embarrassing. I think that's really maybe classless is the word. Because, one, how are you going to go to your home team's game just to boo somebody from another team? It's kind of weird. Secondly, booing a guy who didn't really do anything wrong, and I'll save you and Troy the time by not ranting on this topic, but a guy who really didn't do anything wrong is being booed by a large contingent of Sixers. The whole thing is weird. And I just want to say 18 points, 14 rebounds, not really too far off from what he would give us here. So that's Tobias Harris. Like, that's the player he's been. I don't know. I have nothing else to say. That's who he is.
Yeah. Yeah, agreed. Tobias, I mean, appreciate what he did here, and didn't end the best, obviously, and that is what it is. That's sports. That's the world of sports. He didn't deserve to be booed. That's for sure. He showed up to work every day, and was a big part of this team. So, all right, Sixers' upcoming schedule. October basketball is done. I think all Sixers fans are happy to turn the calendar to November. Coming up on Saturday night, the Grizzlies come to town, and then the Sixers are hitting the West Coast for a road trip to Phoenix, and then 2 games in LA against the Clippers and Lakers. The new dome in LA, what's it called, the Intuit Dome, will be where the Sixers will be on November 6th, and followed by a game with the Lakers after that. So tough stretch. Again, it doesn't get any easier, but the Sixers will be tested again. Memphis and then Phoenix, and then the 2 LA teams. We'll see what they do. But that's a wrap for episode 161 of Planet 76. Week 1 of the NBA season is in the books for the Sixers. Sixers sit at 1-3, and we'll see what happens in the week ahead. I think if I speak for Michael and I on both, Michael and I both on this point. No matter what happens over this next week or two, even take Michael's advice from earlier. I mean, let's wait until we get a 20, 30 game sample size before we start tossing haymakers. And I mean, again, health is important for those 2 guys in particular we've talked about a lot, and let's just wait and see. I'm still extremely confident in what this team can do when those guys get on the floor, and we're just eager to see it along with you. So we'll see you next time on Planet 76. Again, this is episode 161. We'll see you next time for episode 162. You just listened to an episode of the Planet 76 podcast. Hey, we appreciate you joining us for this episode. Whatever platform you're on, why don't you hit that subscribe button for us, and we'll see you next time.